Ankur is an antique dealer who has been working in Pangaean for decades. He said that the most evil, terrifying, and fairy-like thing he had ever received in his life was the Kunlun corpse. When I met him, I was still a young and poor boy. I liked to follow him and listen to him tell various inside stories about Pangaean, antique counterfeiting techniques, tomb robbing managers, etc. So, Brother Ankur also likes me more. This story about Kunlun's corpse was told by him once during a meal. One year in early winter, it snowed heavily early. There was no one on the street, so he called me to Donglation and invited me to eat in a copper pot. Shabu shabu. The two of them sat down on the second floor, slowly drinking wine and chatting. They talked about various strange events in Pangaean. He also lamented that as the largest second-hand goods trading place in China, Pangaean has everything. Antique jewelry, porcelain, Ming and King Shabu Shabu utensils. Of course, there are also some evil objects, such as human bone chopsticks, skull pills from Tibet, Longlin from Southeast Asia, little ghosts from Thailand, etc. He had been in Pangaean for decades and had seen basically everything. The only thing that made him feel horrified was an item inside a cabinet made of coffin boards. But that was also the luckiest time in his life, and he made a fortune from it. I asked him what that was. He said with emotion that that thing was an almost miraculous artifact that truly penetrated the heavens and the earth. But this thing is very evil and not strong enough, so it is best not to watch it. It is said that those who have watched it have encountered various strange experiences. Some have disappeared, and some have died, and the origin of this thing is also very mysterious. It fell from the sky when he first went to Pangaean. I was very interested at the time, so I urged him to talk about it quickly. He recalled it and said that it happened many years ago. At that time, he had just arrived in Pangaean and was young and energetic. He only wanted to make money by doing business, such as the blood bronze cauldron in the tombs in the western suburbs, the mummies in Xinjiang, the coffin boards from ghost marriages, the evil Buddha smuggled from Nanyang, etc. What did he do? He dared to do anything, but he quickly gained some fame. Later, someone gave him a message and said nothing more. The evil Buddhas in Nanyang are all managed by Nanyang barbarians. These people have dark skin and eyes, are vicious and cruel, so it's better not to offend them. Brother Anj was still a little fat man at that time, and he was not afraid of anything. He took a bottle of Aduotao, took a sip and said, no matter how powerful the giant worm Buddha of Nanyang is, can he still defeat our Guanyin master? Early one morning, the waiter told him that there was a bastard who, maybe because he drank too much, left a nice mahogany cabinet at their door. Something was fishy. My second brother went to take a look in person and found that it was an old mahogany cabinet. The overall style of the cabinet was simple and rich, almost half a meter high. There was also a delicate red copper lock on it, which looked exquisite and grand. It's really a good thing, but I don't know why. This cabinet looks gloomy, and Brother Anj always feels that something is wrong, but he can't tell. He studied the copper lock for a long time, but the copper lock had no keyhole and could not be opened at all. He shook it hard, and there was something rolling around inside. He walked around the cabinet and glanced at him. The clerk went to the opposite shop and asked the old shopkeeper to help him with the eyes. He said that this was something he had just received from the country to see if there were any holes. The old shopkeeper took a closer look with his reading glasses and said that the cabinet was made of fine mahogany, thick and round, and was at least hundreds of years old. He had seen the copper locks and found that some ancient locks were specially made and were not designed at the beginning. Let open. It seems that there is something in this cabinet that cannot be exposed to light. Brother Ankur quickly asked, what kind of thing is this that cannot be seen in the light? The old shopkeeper stopped talking, and the second brother didn't think much. It was getting dark at this time. After eating, he fell on the bed and fell asleep. Who knew that he would be so exhausted after sleeping? And he felt as if someone was there with his eyes wide open. She pushed him hard and asked, why did he rob his house? When Brother Anj raised his eyes, he felt that his eyelids were heavy and blurry. He saw several old men sitting cross-legged on the bed, all with fierce looks. nodding at his head with their hands. He was so sleepy at the time that he fell asleep again. However, the next day, his head felt like it had been broken off by a wasp, and a big pus bulged out. His whole body ached, and his bones ached. He felt something was wrong and quickly asked someone to ask. Some knowledgeable people say that the dead and the living usually compete for space. Houses are built on top of graves, or urns or other things are placed under the bed. If the foot of the bed rests on a dead person's arm, the arm will ache. If the foot of the bed presses against the dead person's legs, the person's legs and feet will cramp. If it's a headache, maybe the foot of the bed is pressing on the dead person's head. Brother Ange quickly got under the bed and took a look, and found that there was a mahogany cabinet under his head. It seemed that this thing was really doing something strange. Now he doesn't care how much the cabinet is worth. Taking advantage of noon, he quickly carried it to the yard, smashed the copper-locked cabinet several times, and the door opened with a sound, revealing a bright jade good inside. As soon as Anka touched the good with his hand, he concluded that this must be carved from a piece of precious jade. When you touch this precious good in the hot summer, a chilly air rushes straight to your forehead, and the heat all over your body disappears. There was a faint mist lingering in the jade good, and there was something else inside. It was about the size of a ping pong ball and he couldn't see clearly. When he shined it against the sun, his hands trembled and he almost dropped the good to the ground. It turned out that in the lavender mist, there was a fist-sized fetus with small hands and feet, eyes, ears, nose and mouth. The body was curled up together. It was really frightening. This thing was really evil. Anka saw that this thing was so evil. How could he dare to leak it? He quickly asked the guy to transport the thing and the cabinet to the wilderness. He poured 2 bottles of gasoline in the wild and burned it severely. The mahogany cabinet crackled, burned completely, but they didn't expect that the wall good was fine at all. Not only was it fine, it burned for most of the day, but it was still cold and piercing. There was no other way, so they had to bury the good under the old locust tree. The two of them hurriedly after leaving. For several days, he dreamed of that child every time he closed his eyes, running on the floor with his bare feet, hearing the child's clear laughter, and once even felt that the child was following him. He climbed up his legs and feet and called him daddy. After a few days, Anka was dragged to his death. I had no choice but to ask for help from an old collector, Mr. Bay. I usually like to collect these weird things. Brother Wu told the purpose of his visit and respectfully handed the jade good to Master Bay, but Master Bay asked him to put it on the table. Unexpectedly, as soon as the jade good was placed, the bronze mirror hanging on the wall suddenly started to tremble, making a sizzling sound despite the wind. At the same time, the light red mist in the jade good also dissipated, revealing a white jade-like fetus. Anka was surprised to find that the fetus had grown a bit now. It spread its limbs and slowly raised its head, looking coldly at the ancient mirror. The chirping sound of the ancient bronze mirror became louder, not angry and intimidating, as if it would fall from the wall at any time. Brother Ange was so frightened that he took a few steps back and almost sat down on the ground. Master Bay also showed a trace of surprise on his face, but he quickly calmed down and covered the good with a piece of red cloth. The bronze mirror then recovered calm. Master Bay told him that this mahogany cabinet was indeed an evil spell in Nanyang that was going to kill him. He made it out of 7 dead coffin boards. It was so sinister that if it were placed in a house, everyone in the house would be killed. Only then did Brother Ange realize that no wonder someone wanted to snatch the house from him. It turned out to be this reason. He asked again, "What happened to this jade fetus?" Mr. Bay said calmly that this thing was rather evil and he couldn't tell it clearly. Brother Wu became anxious when he heard what he said. He wanted to take the jade good away and go find someone to take a look, but he didn't dare to delay it any longer. Mr. Bay then said, "To be honest, this jade good cannot be moved around. This thing is both good and evil. It is a rare cold thing." According to his analysis, the cabinet made of 7 murderous coffin boards may just be a device for placing the jade good. This thing must have been enshrined elsewhere, but somehow it got lost. Maybe someone stole it. Later, this cabinet was seen by an ignorant person. Seeing that he was very ferocious and capable of harming others, he threw it to Anchor, thinking that he had picked up a big treasure. Mr. Bay only told him that this thing was indeed a treasure, but it was so evil that only 7 people who died violently could suppress it. With Anchor's blessing, I probably can't even imagine it. It's better to give it to him in exchange for half a lifetime of wealth. Mr. Bay waved his hand. If Brother Anchor is willing to give up his love, he will give up all his things. Seeing that Brother Ange was hesitant, Mr. Bay added that if Brother Ange refused, the fierceness of the treasure good would make him afraid of living. But today, Mr. Bay wants to take this treasure good with both grace and power. Anchor gritted his teeth and yelled a sky-high price, and Master Bay took the good with force. Brother Ange took a sip of wine and sighed with me. He thought that Master Bay, just saying this, could not really give so much. Later I found out that according to Master Bay's wishes, this courtyard, including all the antiques in the courtyard, was actually given to me. I couldn't help but ask him what those things were and how they could be worth so much money. Brother Ange said that he later found out that this thing was so popular, let alone a courtyard house, even if he wanted all of Master Bay's property, he would sigh with emotion. Have you heard of Kunlun fetus? According to Tibetan scriptures, the Kunlun fetus is a fairy fetus condensed from the mountains and waters of heaven, earth, and mountains. It is often at the core of a large mountain range, where the best feng shui in the world gathers. It takes thousands of years of accumulation to condense into a fetus. Like fetus, white jade, this is the Kunlun fetus. The spiritual stone that gave birth to Monkey King in Journey to the West is the Kunlun fetus. This Kunlun mountain has been called Zyante people since ancient times. If you dig out the jade body, bury yourself in it, and absorb the essence of heaven and earth, you can become an immortal over time. Therefore, all the emperors are frantically looking for him. But throughout the ages, only the emperor has found the place where the immortal fetus was born and successfully buried himself in it, and there has been no other person. It is said that if you can find the Kunlun fairy fetus that has not yet been conceived, and seal it in jade with a secretary, you can also deceive God's will, bury yourself in the fairy fetus, seize his creation, and become an immortal. He said with emotion that Master Bay was a living god at that time. Who would have thought that he wanted to be a real god? I asked him about Mr. Bay. What happened next? Anchor Kiln shook his head. He disappeared the next day and never appeared again. I asked him about the Nanyang shop again, and Brother Anchor said that there was a fire in that shop that night, and everyone was burned to death inside, and no one escaped. I nodded. This is indeed the case, so Dabe is not worried. Brother Wu nodded and drank a glass of wine, feeling angry and sighing. Fortunately, I am not greedy. Then he nodded again. Unexpectedly, the child who called me daddy was not a kid, but a Kunlun fairy child. I am so lucky. Anchor was talking to himself again. For more than 10 years, I have been waiting for Mr. Bay to come to me, but he never came. Later I figured it out. Maybe it wasn't that he didn't want to get rid of me, but that white jade fetus. He was silent, just drinking heavily. When he walked out the door, he looked at the heavy snow falling outside. Brother Wu whispered, after so many years, I don't know if that little baby has grown up.